Hey, Black Belt reads. I just got done training for a couple hours. 10 horrifying moments in books. What does that mean? This isn't 10 of the best horror books or 10 of the scariest books. This is 10 moments that happen in books. Some of these aren't even horror books that just really stuck with me. Like, sometimes there's one on here that's definitely not a horror novel, but it's got one of the most horrifying moments in it. So the top five will be pretty light, just moments that stuck out to me when I was just browsing my shelves here. But the bottom five are the ones that really messed me up. I could do this video like 5 times. I was like grabbing books off the shelf. Oh, yeah, this moment, this moment. But we'll start off very light, very nice and easy. And there's going to be spoilers for pretty much every book on this list. But I don't think anything is going to be spoiled in a way that will ruin the story for you. These are just moments throughout the book. I'm not really talking about plot or anything. So, spoiler warning, anytime I show a book, I'll mention it again, just in case you haven't read the book and you want to be completely surprised. The first one, Swan Song by Robert McCammon. So, this is an awesome book, really great. 900 pages that feels like it's about 400 pages because it's written so good, so well. Anyway, so spoilers. The moment I'm talking about in this book is going to be Job's mask. Of course, if you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, this is like a nuclear fallout. And then the people that survived, when they come to, some of them grow this like growth, this hard scab over their entire head. And they can still breathe, but it's like a hard shell mask that grows over their whole head. It's really gross. It's it just stuck in my mind ever since I've read it. It's a huge plot point later on in the book. So when I say that, I'm not really spoiling anything. You could still read the book and don't know what the point of it is, but there is a point and it's really well done. Job's mask. Yeah. Next up, I could put so many really obvious choices on the list, like, The Girl Next Door, that whole freaking book. Blood Meridian, there's like half of that book that most people can't even read because it's so horrifying. But instead of Blood Meridian, I'm going to do Child of God. The moment in Child of God I'm referring to is going to be Lester Ballard and his necrophilia. So, again, spoilers for Child of God. Lester comes across a couple that have died in their car. I can't remember exactly how they died. There's two corpses. So he robs them and he goes away. And his mind starts to go. He comes back later, takes the female, and keeps her as his sex object until she is basically falling apart, rotting to pieces. It is, yeah, it's one of the most horrifying things you'll ever read. Necrophilia has a special place in this list. All right. The next one I'm going to do is not so much horrifying like the first two as it is just really, really gross, really disgusting. For me personally, this is the one moment in all of Junji Ito's books that sticks in my mind, and I really wish it didn't. So I'm about to ruin all of your lives with this. The story I'm talking about is Glyceride. So if you've read it, surely you know. I'm gonna find it real quick. Glyceride. So Junji Ito, very famous horror manga artist and writer, and he's got Uzumaki, which they've made a TV show, which I don't really watch TV that much, so but I have the book. It's really good. He's got Tomie, Gyo, lots of really, really good. Oh man, this one, he does a lot of like really horrifying imagery, but he also does a lot of really gross stuff, and this is probably the grossest. So it's about family that lives underneath a restaurant, and it's very greasy. The restaurant, the oils are in the air, it's very greasy. So the way he draws it, it looks very oily and dirty, and everyone's sweaty. And this kid right here, well, he's got a real bad problem with zits. And there's a scene where it's getting worse and worse. And oh god, I'm so sorry, guys. He's popping the zits. Yeah, I had pretty bad acne whenever I was in high school, so this is really, really horrifying to me. And there's a point right here. Okay, please be warned right here, where his face is just so covered in zits, and he's basically terrorizing his sister. And he squeezes his face. Okay, here we go. So sorry, everybody. This is, yes, so he squeezes his face. All right, that's enough of that. Anyway, should that be number one on the list? Probably. Wait till we get to number one. Jesus. All right. Next up, we'll go with some old school horror. So just like I said with Girl Next Door, there's a lot of obvious choices. There's a lot of obvious choices when we talk about Stephen King. For this list, I'm going to do Gerald's Game. I could do It, The Stand. There's so many really horrifying moments, especially early on in his career. But I had read this recently, so I read this year. And the moment I'm going to talk about, spoilers for Gerald's Game, is Space Cowboy. So specifically, if you've never read Gerald's Game and you're still watching, she, I can't remember the lady's name, our protagonist is handcuffed to the bed, and then her husband dies. So she's stuck in a lacy dress, handcuffed to the bed, and days pass, right? So she can't get out. So it's already super horrifying. A really good premise for the book. But the thing that makes it so horrifying is there's a very tall man who is like deformed. He's got like what is it, like not like gigantism, but like where your features grow in unproportionate to your body. So he's like really tall and lanky, and he has a huge head, and he's not all there mentally, right? She doesn't know that, so she's trapped in this bed, and she just thinks it is like a freaking demon. She basically comes to, it's dark outside, and this guy, she calls him the Space Cowboy, I believe. He's standing in the corner of her room, and yeah, I mean, how horrifying. Just imagine you're tied in a cabin in the woods in the dark, and then there's some what you perceive to be like a monster standing in the corner. You can't do anything. She hallucinates at one point that it's her father, and she's completely distraught, as anyone would be. And she just says, Daddy, go ahead, do what you want to do, because her dad sexually abused her. Anyway, yeah, this is a pretty rough video. I'm sorry, guys. Little bit. Okay, this is actually the only one I don't have a copy of in my hand. I did the audiobook. It's Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. And the moment I'm talking about, this is kind of a big spoiler. I mean, not really. It's not going to affect your reading, but spoilers for Between Two Fires. It is going to be Tomas in hell. This actually just really shocked me when I read the book. You're following Tomas and Delphine throughout the novel, and at one point Tomas dies, and you think, what is going to happen next, right? Well, he wakes up and he's in hell. I won't talk too much about what happens to him in hell, but just that whole section of the book was really, really effective for me. And it really cemented that this is like one of the best books I've ever read. So, Tomas in hell. Yeah. All right. The last five are going to start getting much more rough. This is the book I was talking about when I said clearly not a horror book. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I just read this recently, right? I read it last month, so this is on my mind. This is one of the things that kind of spurred me to make this video. And this isn't really going to spoil anything of the book at all, but spoilers if you're scared. This is going to be the birth of Lee. So Lee is Adam's servant. You know, he cooks, cleans, all that, takes care of him. And they're sitting around drinking one night, and Lee tells the story of his parents. So his parents were Chinese. They were immigrants working on the railroad, and no one knew that Lee's mother was a woman. She pretended to be a guy, I guess, so she could work. I don't remember exactly how this happened, but his mother and father are there. She becomes pregnant. She eventually gets discovered that she's a woman, and the entire community of Chinese people working on the railroad viciously attack her, rape her, and basically kill her. Like a lot of people, I don't know. The way he tells it is so horrifying. And then the part that really got me is you're like, well, Lee's alive, so how does Lee survive? Well, he survived because his father had to claw Lee out of the mother's stomach, just rip into her stomach and claw him out to save his life. And yeah, that moment has really stuck with me since I read that. And such a beautifully written, beautiful theme, you know, with the Tim Shill and all that. But then that moment, I was like, oh my God, I had like a physical reaction when I read that. All right. The next one we're going to do is Rio Ewer's Halcyon. I never quite know how to pronounce that. Halcyon? Halcyon? So this is going to be the box. So this is actually kind of a big spoiler for this book. So if you haven't read it, sorry, you might want to skip forward. I don't think it will really take anything away from your experience. I'm sure a lot of you haven't read this, though. We have a sort of antagonist throughout this novel. She's a woman who kind of runs a community on an island, right? And it's kind of like a religious culty kind of thing. So this family finds themselves there, but you know she's evil. She's doing like little evil things, right? But then you get a little bit of her backstory, and you get to her basically being kidnapped and put inside of a room into a box. And there's a group of men who are into hurting people. So they will pull her out of the box and hurt her in all kinds of ways that you can imagine. It is described in the book. Man, that moment just really stuck with me. It's one of those moments where you've all felt this before, where you kind of feel for the villain of the book, right? It doesn't make all the things she does later okay, but then you feel bad for her though at the same time. But especially when she says she was in the box for, I think it's 4 years. 4 years. And there's this group of men, like 7 men or something, and they all wear these animal masks, and they will drag her out of the box every so often and do what they want with her. It's, yeah, one of the craziest, horrifying moments. That's not really a horror book. That's more of a thriller, but that moment just really messed me up. All right, this one, this is, we're in the top three, and these three could be interchanged. Really, they could. I'm just going to do them in this order. This is kind of my personal order. Everybody else will maybe have a different opinion, but The Devil Takes You Home, Gabino Iglesias. This is a really, really beautifully written horror thriller novel, supernatural kind of. So big spoilers here if you haven't read this. This is nothing that will really affect your read of the novel again, but you know, some people are really weird about spoilers, so it's going to be El Milagrito. If you've read this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If not, be warned. This is kind of like cartel, cult, supernatural, just pure evil. So one of the ways this cartel will get things done is they will go to a woman, I call her a witch if you want, I don't know, a voodoo witch, I don't know. She has a child. The child, they call him El Milagrito. I think it means like little miracle or something like that. Basically, they'll take this child, and man, in the book, it's really, really, really horrible. When you get to that part, you're just like, what in the fuck am I reading? Even the guy, the protagonist, is like, what the fuck? You know, he can't believe what's happening, but he's in a really bad situation where he can't really say anything or he'll probably get killed. So, you know, what would you do? I don't know what I would do. I would hopefully never find myself in that sort of situation anyway. But all right, I'm avoiding the real meat of this. God, why did I say meat? They'll take this kid and they cut off pieces of him and they use it as like in rituals for spells to get what they want. It's like Mexican cartel weird occultism stuff. They take this child and pull him out and cut pieces of him off. It's really, really awful. Why did I decide to make this video? I don't know. Berserk. So Berserk, I could do a whole video about like the top 50 most disturbing moments in Berserk. This whole thing is disturbing from front to back. I'm just going to go with the eclipse. If you've never read Berserk, I'll try not to spoil this. There's a moment that happens where everything takes a 90-degree turn in the story, and you know things are bad. You've seen demons and bad, you know, you've seen rape and all these horrible things in this book. But then when you get to the eclipse, it all just dives off of a cliff. It's a member of the party trying to ascend to godhood. But to do that, he's got to sacrifice the rest of the party. And that's what the eclipse is. It is, yeah, famously one of the most messed up things. I'm not even going to open it and show you any of that. I can't. It's really, really, really bad. And it really sets the stage for the entirety of the rest of the book. I think the eclipse happens maybe in book 3 or 4. I can't remember, but all right. Gone on for quite a while. The first one, or number 1, for me personally, this is number 1 on the list. It might not be for everyone else, especially after some of the things I've shown here. But okay, David Foster Wallace. There's a short story in here. It's actually only like 2 or 3 pages long. It is Incantations of Burned Children, I think is what it's called. So I have someone in my life that was burned very badly when they were a child. They got the pot of boiling water and hid it, and it burned them really bad. And they're fine now. Can't even tell that happened to them. But at the time, it was really rough. But they're perfectly fine now. The child in this story is not. That's basically what that whole story is about, a baby who gets a hold of the pot and spills boiling water on them. And David Foster Wallace, one of the greatest writers ever, right? Just decided to write about that. Yeah, that one got me the most. I would say that's like the most horrifying moment I've ever read in a book because of my personal experience with that, but also just the way he writes it. The boiling water hits this child, and then, you know, they try to help him, and then they realize that the water has got into his diaper, and so the water is just boiling through the inside of his diaper. And yeah, so sorry guys. I don't know. My next one, I'll make it much more lighthearted. So thanks for watching, guys. If you've read any of these, please let me know. If you haven't, that's probably good. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm always drawn to the darkest things like this. But yeah, let me know in the comments. Love to hear from you guys. Please consider subscribing. See ya.